Hi, this is Shane Starr on a beautiful November day in South Orange County, California, where I am going to hopefully help myself and a few others declutter our lives. So I was watching this video um, from a Stoicism channel about decluttering your life, and I was thinking how helpful that is for everyone. Um, and by decluttering, I don't mean just physical objects. It can be that, but it can be a whole host of other things. And that's what we're going to get into today. Um, I'm going to go down each of the 8 cognitive functions and talk about how types can have clutter problems and how types can fix those problems. And in this case, I think clutter in our lives comes from our top function. And I think the key to decluttering our lives comes from the um, fourth function, the inferior function, the suggestive function in socionics. And so think first function, overcharged leads to clutter in your life. The key to getting rid of that clutter lies in your suggestive or inferior function. And I'm going to explain how right now. So let's start with SE. So we have ESFPs and ESTPs, and they lead with SE, and their inferior or suggestive function is NI, introverted intuition. So I think these types are most apt to having physical clutter. And moving along the lines, I'm going to explain how I can relate to each of these things. So the way I can relate to this is I've always had somewhat of a shopping problem. I get a ton of shirts. I have 2 of every color I really like, 1 of the specialty colors like this mint green I'm wearing today, and I have 5 white ones. I have 6 of these suit jackets, 6 matching pants, 6 of the designer shoes I wear. I have more than I need, and I continue to buy more. And so every now and then I need to cut that out. And how do I do it? I use my introverted intuition, say, to focus. So physical collection, physical clutter, you're getting more and more and more, and then you use your inferior function, in this case NI, to focus on what you really want, what you really need, and cut out all the extraneous stuff, all the things that you sort of want and you don't need. I like to divide, like, make 3 things, white, gray, and black. White are the things, say, I want to keep. Black are the things I know I'm throwing out, and gray are the things I'm not too sure about. And anyone who's developed physical clutter, the problem is that your gray pile becomes the biggest one. And I sort of trick myself, and what I end up doing is, I throw the black away, I put the white away, and then the gray is still there. I might pull 1 or 2 things, and then I throw the rest out with the black. That's the way I deal with it. So for lead SEs, that's ESFPs, ESTPs, it's the most straightforward, literal sense of the word clutter. It's physical clutter, usually brought upon by shopping, and they just clear it out using that NI focus every now and then to clear it out and start over. Moving on to SI, ISTJs and ISFJs. I think the clutter here, it's also physical clutter, but it's more memorabilia. It's more keepsakes, things that have special meaning for you. This can be old pictures, it can be old, like papers, books, old clothes. And the way I relate to this one, like I keep a lot of books from my college days on subjects that I'm never going to really go deep in again. I have this one book, Hegel's Philosophy of Right, which deals with his political and social philosophy. And once I had to write a paper about how his conception of the self had a social dynamic to it, and I juxtapose that to Jean-Paul Sartre's notion of the self, which not only is individual but virtually empty. So you have this self with full people and another self that's empty, and it's kind of cool, but I don't need the book to talk about it anymore. But still, I keep it because it reminds me of my time at Yale, and I'm like, yeah, that was a cool class, that was a cool paper I wrote. But it really doesn't serve me anymore. It just collects dust, and I really don't need that book anymore. I can't take it with me when I leave this planet, so why just let it sit there? None of my kids are interested in that kind of stuff, so no one's going to use it. Also, on that same subject, I have this old Letterman's Yale jacket that it's not really my style. I wear a suit to work. I wear Adidas track suits at home when I'm not working. There's no room for a Letterman's jacket. That's not my style. That's not my thing. I'm not going to a Yale football game. It's just memorabilia, like holding on to it, taking up space in my garage for nothing. I would say SI leads are probably among the greatest hoarders. For whatever reason, any leads tend to be hoarders also, but SI theoretically goes with the concept of hoarding perhaps the most, because they have things that are obviously not serving them but that they can't bring themselves to part with. And the key is in Inferior NE. You use that NE as novelty. So, the same way SE leads use their NI to focus on what they want and need, SIs use NE as novelty, something new. Get rid of the old, clear out the old, in with the new, start something fresh, and clear out your space and your mind with it. And that's the key to getting rid of excess memorabilia, is by using your extroverted intuition to think of other paths you can go down. Start a new tradition, a new tradition, perhaps less is more, something like that. Okay, so moving on, TE leads. These guys have clutter in terms of their schedules, and they might not collect physical clutter by way of shopping objects or items or memorabilia that they keep around long after its time has passed, but they create clutter in their schedules, routines, things that they do. It can be apps on their phone, systems that they go by, subscriptions to things, gym memberships. Whatever it is, they pack their schedule with these things that don't really serve them anymore, but they feel compelled to continue on. I think this is more of a problem for ESTJs than ENTJs, but nonetheless, ENTJs tend to lose their life in the details kind of thing. They don't pay attention to those details, and they add up. Before they know it, their schedule's packed with all these weird, not even weird, just routines, processes, events that they're not really interested in, that don't really serve them, that they should just cut out. And the way to do that is through their inferior or suggestive FI. Find the values that matter most to you and stick with those and cut out the rest. You have a monthly book club meeting that you're not really that interested in. Cut it out and spend that time doing something that is really part of a current passion, instead of something you just sort of fell into that isn't working for you anymore. Same thing with workout programs, apps on your phone. systems you might be using at work, cut the ones out that you don't need anymore. Clear your cache, as we would say, with your mobile phone or something, or your computer. So again, with TE, it's your schedule. Your schedule becomes too overloaded and packed, and the key to that is through Inferior FI. Stick to a few things that you value, that matter to you, and cut out the rest. Okay, moving on. TI. These are INTPs and ISTPs, and I would say they collect clutter in their lives when it comes to projects. These are things they're working on. It can be either, for academics, it would be papers they're writing. For artisans, it might be models they're making, either physical models as a hobby, or technical or systematic models, for work or something. Lead TIs love to fix things. They're always working on an engine, again, a model, a paper, a project of some sort, home improvements, stuff like that. And the key with them is, they get so lost in their machinations, that, not imagination, but machinations as in machine. They get so lost in the technicalities of their work that they forget what's viable, like in the real world, in terms of utility. So I would say use your FE, that's your inferior or your suggestive function. Use your FE to see what other people are doing, which will kind of keep you grounded in a mental way, because you can, just like every lead function can get carried away, so can TI, and you can get lost in a million projects that you never really finish, or it'd be better to clear out some of those that don't really have a good utility for in the general sense of the word, and then you can focus on the ones that matter more, and you can successfully see those through their conclusion. All right, moving on. We're going to flip it around. Our FE leads who need their TI. These guys, it's easy. Their lives become cluttered with their social media. Too many friends on Facebook, Instagram, groups they follow. These are friendships that aren't even real most of the time. Some of them might even be bots. They might have the same person they're friending on 4 different fake accounts. And these people, more than anyone else, are ENFJs and ESFJs. They can gain something by going through their friends list and cutting out the people they don't really know, who they're not real life friends with, and focusing on the people that matter more to them. Use your TI for logic. I'm friends with this person. They've never liked a single one of my posts. I've never liked a single one of theirs. Oh wow, they don't even have any posts. Who is this person? Do I really value this follower, or do I just have them on there to collect another follower? Use your logic to cut those people out, or those bots rather out, or at some point it doesn't even matter whether it's a people or a bot. So yeah, ENFJs and ESFJs can declutter their lives by shaving down their friends list and sticking with people who they at least know, or they're at least somewhat acquaintances with. Having a million friends, there's some famous people who have a ton of fake friends, and I'm not going to go into the names. There's people who are more aware of this than me. I'm just saying, even our most famous people with the most Instagram followers in the world, they have a ton of fake accounts following them, probably on purpose. And it's just like, how does that really serve you, other than just fake clout that doesn't really matter anyway? I guess for them it matters in some way or another, but I know there's metrics in social media now that can parse real followers from fake followers, and so the fakes aren't really helping that much. Get rid of them and have a more real existence. Okay, just three more. FI, these are ISFPs and INFPs, and I think they can best declutter their lives by sort of cutting through their fantasies. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, fantasies, but I think all of us have dreams and wishes and hopes and stuff. But I think our INFPs and ISFPs get so caught up in their idealized world that they have all these little subplots and sub stories, and at the heart of it all, it's not even real. It's just their imagination, like this person will tell me this, and then I would act like this, and then this will happen, and then I'll be in this other state, and it's none of it's real. And I think their way to break out of this self delusion dream world that they can fall into and clutter their lives up with is to use their inferior TE to really focus on efficiency. What out of all these dreams and hopes and wishes and narratives they have going on in their head, which ones are plausible, which ones can actually get me somewhere and get me credit in the real world with, and stick to those and cut out the clutter of the rest. That doesn't mean to never dream, and I would say for all the types, I was going to say this for the end, but it just came up now. We don't want to overcorrect and overreact. SE, you cut out too much and now you have to go shopping for the same thing you threw away. SI, you cut out something that was important to you in order to declutter, and now you can never have that special thing back. TE, you cut too much out of your schedule and suddenly you realize that did matter to me. I stopped doing it. Now I gotta restart it again and start a new membership all over when I already had one, something like that. Projects, you can let a project die if you're a TI person, and then just think, whatever happened, that gave me enjoyment. I don't care if it made my life a little more cluttered. FE, you cut out too many friends. Hey, why'd you unfollow me? It's like, oh, I didn't know it was you. I thought it was a bot, or you can go too far. Same thing with FI and your fantasies. You don't want to become a robot. We're all human. You got to have dreams, hopes, wishes, desires. I'm just saying to use your TE to cut out the fat of those things and stick to the lean, efficient dreams that you can actually act upon. And that leads us to our intuitive types. Lead NE, our ENFPs and ENTPs, they have a ton of ideas, a ton of, I don't want to sound pejorative here, but, a lot of get rich quick schemes, it seems. They have a lot of strategies. Oh, we should start our own business and do this or that. When you hear someone do that, they're almost always an ENFP or an ENTP. They get excited about, you're sitting there playing cards at 2 a.m. at the afters, and it's like, dude, yeah, let's start this. We'll make bank. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. Yeah, dude, we'll hook up next week for sure. Here's my email, and nothing's ever gonna come of it. You can declutter your life by using that SI organization tool. Cut out the pie in the sky ideas. Maybe not all of them. Stick to a couple that might actually work in the real world, and focus on key strategies that'll help further your job, your career, workarounds that really matter that you can get something out of. That's how an ENFP or ENTP can declutter their lives. Cut out the ideas that are reoccurring, that don't really make sense, that don't really go anywhere. Use your SI organization skills to strengthen, build foundation under some of those dreams and make them real life. And that leads us to our final group, our lead NI people, INFJs and INTJs. I think these are the most natural declutterers out of the whole bunch. NI is all about focus, decluttering. The problem is that they overthink it so much that their decluttering thoughts become the clutter in their lives. As ironic as that sounds, they have these plans. I'm going to declutter, and then They add to the plan, they adjust the plan, they revise the plan, they make a rough draft and a second draft of the plan, then revise it again. Next thing you know, life is what happens while you're planning something else, right? So you're planning to declutter your life, and it can be of anything, but you never actually do it. And I think in this case, an NI lead needs to use their inferior SE to turn those thoughts into real action, because they have the thoughts more than any of the other lead types. The lead NIs already have what it takes to declutter their lives, and high operating NI users at the top are already living decluttered lives. But in order to really bring it home, they need to use their SE to get out of their head and into action and make things happen. So that's it. All of our 16 types in the 8 cognitive functions or information elements, metabolism elements. I would say the only disclaimer here, we know that everyone can do everything and have a problem with everything, but if we dive too deeply into that, then what are we even talking about? It doesn't resonate anymore. I would just say all of us can relate to more than one of these things, and the key is to declutter your life, but don't overcorrect such that you have regrets on that end. Okay, that's all I have for today. One of these days I'm going to get to the 48 laws of power. I have it queued up and ready to go. Other things keep getting in the way though. That's it for today. Peace out.